I thought I would create a little training video here to make this spreadsheet make sense to people. There are three tabs at the bottom. There is a teaching reference tab, which I'll spend a little bit more time in later. There's a blank file, so if you want to actually start using this, you can just start dropping in numbers. So you could conceivably go back and take 2-3 jobs that you know the results of, and you could start plugging it in here, and you could start to see how you can quantify the data in a way that people understand it. There are about 10 different ways to report ROI. That means different things to different people. So let's say I was having a church retreat, and I just wanted to have more people there. I wasn't collecting money at the retreat. I just wanted more people in the seats. How do I prove that the campaign we did made a difference? How do I track it? And now maybe on another time when we're having a church on Sunday and we want to see, are we getting bigger collections because we've had 4 renewal sessions in the last few months. So there are different ways that people want to have the ROI calculated. So we'll go through the different ways that you can do it, and that are samples here. The other thing that I really want to point out is that it's really, really important that you understand you need a control group to do this. So in this sample, what I've got is the first column is a static printed piece. Now, I'm using variable data here because that's what this test was all about. But the reality is, it doesn't matter if it's variable data, digital printing, cross-media campaign. It really doesn't matter. What you need to be able to do is track the results. So what we've done is we've created the illusion of a static piece. Why? Because if I did a mailing a month ago, and I had a 2% response rate, and I do a mailing this month with variable data, and I have a 10% response rate, you can't say it happened because of the variable data. It's 2 different points in time, and it could have been something that happened in the economy. It could have been something that happened with the price of gas. It could have been the election took place. All sorts of things can have an effect. So what you want to do is you want to take and you want to make sure that you're tracking a control group that's based on a random selection of people from your group as a whole that have essentially the piece that you've always done. The control group would be the static piece. And you don't actually print a static piece. You basically print and write a rule statement when you're adding variable data that says if the random number is 1 to 5, then treat this like we don't know who they are. So it would be dear customer instead of dear first name. The second group that we do is variable text but no variable graphics. And the third group is variable text and variable graphics. Now you could cut out the middle group if you wanted, but it's something that as you're doing this you can track and see what's happening. So we try to get people to put 5% in each one of these groups. And it's very important that randomization takes place to be able to do that. So the blank file is there for you to work on. The sample tab here are 4 jobs that were done in the past. This is something my students worked on with some people. And in some cases, we actually did the design of the job. In some cases, we just sort of helped plan out the research side of things. And then we helped to track it. But what we've got is we have a retail screen printer. And what this screen printer did was they were specializing in screen printing T-shirts for fraternities and sororities around the country at these different colleges. When they sent the brochure to them, they basically made sure that they might have had 20 different T-shirt displays on their brochure, but each one of them had the 3 Greek letters of the sorority or fraternity they were selling to. And by quantifying it with a control group that we sent out a sampling that had everybody's all different Greek letters on it versus the one that had just theirs, we were able to quantify that they were getting better results. So that's one. The next one was a national retailer. And the details of that were pretty involved. They did a lot of research up front to quantify who their audience were and who were the people likely to purchase. So because of that, they ended up getting very, very high response rates because they qualified their customers so well. The next one is a bank, and they were just trying to get new members, new people joining the bank. And then the last one was an academic institution, and it was dealing with the alumni. And this is another interesting point I like to bring up here is everybody makes this mythical comparison to 2%. And 2% is, and by the way, in the last 5 years, that average, it's posted by DMA, Direct Marketing Association, that average has been anywhere from 1.8 to 2.2%. But people have this magic number of 2% as this is their threshold. If I do better than 2%, then I've done a good job. But what the DMA also says is that if you have a relationship with customers, it's not a cold call. You have a relationship, they purchased something before from you, the average response rate is actually 18. Now that's average. And I mean, there's some highs and lows on that. We did a project with Clemson with the alumni where we sent it out with variable data. They sent it out, and we sent it out for them, but they sent it out what they always do. That was our control group versus whatever. And our threshold was if we beat 18%, we felt like we were a success. The post office, the post office alumni office, we mailed a letter, and we also emailed a form to them. They got 8% and 5%, well below that average for groups that have relationships. When we did it, we got 32% on one. When we did an email blast and a Pearl, we got about 34%, and then we got 37% on actual personalized letter with a self-addressed stamped envelope. So those are the type of things that you have to understand. If you don't send out a control group, you won't know how you did. I mean, we could compare about the 18, and we blew 18 away, but we really blew away what the institution had been doing. And that's really the importance of understanding control and experimental groups. So let me go back and spend a little bit of time talking about each one of these as far as the way we're breaking it down. Obviously, the first cell, you can see where my cursor is. I tell you what, I think what I'm going to try to do is blow this up just a little bit so that we can see the section just a little bit better. And I'll bring it up to 150%. And what I'm looking at right here is the cell is the type of customer. We just list that. It's the same all the way across. Again, I want to refresh your memory. The first column is static. So we're not printing it on an offset press. We're still doing this on a digital press, but we've written rule statements so that it gives the illusion of we don't know who this person is. We don't know their first name. We're not personalizing anything. The next one is just variable text, but no variable graphics. And third one is variable text and variable graphics. Now, we basically, on this one, when we were sending this, we actually sent out, literally we sent out a third, and a third to each of the groups. But what we've done now is we basically just take 5%, and as long as you randomly assign the groups to the 5%, you can project it over the whole group. There are some limitations. I'll try to mention a little bit of that. So the number of records separated for the study. Typically, again, we have 5% of the mailing of 40. This was a 4,000 piece mailing. Just something to recognize. So we took 5%. The dollar cost of the design, it was $475 for the static piece. We actually went out, got an estimate to do all these different types. It was a little bit more to plan in the variable data because you had to maintain the database. You had to take the variable data software, log in, and get it all set up. And then it was significantly more when you had the variable data with variable text and variable graphics, because the variable graphics you had to purchase the photographs or take the photographs. They're data assets now, and you have to write the more complicated rule statements. So the prep work was a little bit more to do that. Then the cost of printing, okay, was more because we ran the static one we priced it, even though I'm saying that we would run this in our test, we would run this on the digital press and just give the illusion. But if we went and priced it, it would be more economical to run the job as a static piece on an offset press. So we priced it that way. We priced it doing a digital job and printing it with just variable text changing. It's a very simple software program. It's very simple to run the press. It's not as hard to double check and work. And then because of the color and the coverage and everything else that was going on and the complexity of it, it was costing more to print it when you were doing it with the full variable graphics and full variable text. The cost of the mailing for each group, so we just have a total between the cost of the design and the cost of the mailing. And this is important because if one of the ROI analysis that you want to do is what were the benefits based on the additional cost of doing this promotional material. When we sent out the pieces, we sent out 5% of 2,100. When we sent out 5% of 2,100, we got one response, okay? One response from the group. When we did it with the variable text, we got 2, and when we did it with the variable text and variable graphics, we got 3. Now, if we project that, since it was based on 5%, if we project that back over the entire mailing, that's telling you that right here in the first yellow cell, and the yellow cells are all the calculations. You can look and see the formula up here, up in the top corner, and you can see how it's taken the relationship of that. But the the idea is whatever's blue you have to fill in, whatever's yellow is automatically calculated. So that would have been 20 responses of the entire 2,100 pieces that went out would have been purchases. Well, if we did it with the variable text only, we would have had 40, and if we did it with the full variable and full graphics, then we would have had 60. So we're projecting it out based on statistical balance. The customer's perceived value of the response. In other words, what's it worth when what's a sale going to be? So the customer was sitting here saying that the average sale, okay, this again was for the screen printing, that the average order of shirts that they would sell was going to be $800. So they used that as for every time they had a sale. So if you take 20 times $800, okay, you're going to have you're going to have a lot bigger number that you're working with. Now, the other thing that comes into play here is the total lifetime value of the customer. If they start buying from you, are they more likely to buy? And this particular company knew the history of their customers, that if they got somebody to buy, that they would buy over a number of years. So they were projecting that the lifetime value of a customer was $5,000. Now notice I had $800 in the first column where I filled in, and it was just repeated in the others because it's the same. It doesn't change whether it's variable or whether it's static. Now, we also are looking at what's the markup. So we've got the default markup set at 25% profit margin. So when you look at this, you need to understand that you can change this. So you can go into this formula and you can change this percentage to anything you want. So if you're dealing with a markup, profit margin of 40% or 20% or 10%, you can change this to whatever it is that you want. And you would change it in this line, and again, wherever it's blue is where you put the number in. Wherever it's yellow, everything's calculated. So if I come down and it says increase profit, again, increase profit, not increase sales. So what I did was, I'll just double click and you'll see the sales line up. I have $800 and I'm taking 25%. So I didn't make $800 times 20 sales because it cost them the t-shirts and it cost them the amount of money to make it. So what they ended up doing was they made basically $200, 25% profit on each sale. So this is a calculation to show that they basically made $4,000 in increased revenue. This is essentially the printer is the one making the revenue at this. Not the printer. The printer is charging for the job, but the customer made $4,000 more in profit when they were selling the job. So you have to understand that again, if I went in here and I changed this to 20%, okay, you can see that the increased profit goes down. So if I'm looking at an analysis that I want to find out, am I getting a return? Is my profit worth the extra expense? A lot of people just do the revenue generated and they don't take and look just at the profit. So you can change the number to anything you want. So now we've got this series right here of yellow boxes. I have the profit increase from the printed piece. So that might be one way that people want to hear it responded. Again, I said there's 10 different ways to talk about an ROI here. Just the response rate, okay? This is the percentage of response rate. So when I mailed out over the 2,100 mail pieces and I got 20 responses, that's the percentage of response. And again, it's written in a percent, so it's a little less than 1%. And then over here, it grows a little bit, and it's growing a little bit more when we have the full variable. And this is a good thing because you can make comparisons, even though it's several decimal places out. It's not written as a percentage; it's written as a decimal version of the percentage. You could change the format the way that shows up if you like. Cost per response. So for every response that you got when it was a static piece, it cost you $139.15. Because I got more responses when I did it with variable text, it was only costing me $75.25 per response. And then if I did it with the full variable, it was only costing me $67.48 to get the response. So I was making $200 in profit, and it cost me for each one of those $200, because this is the cost per response, it was costing me $67.48 to make that $200 in profit. So was this a good one? Yes. So we've got the total return of the customer's production on their investment. So now what we're going to do is we're multiplying it out. And again, you can take a look at any one of these. You can look at the formula. If I scroll back down, you could see exactly how it came together with all the different cells that were involved as far as what was making sense. Again, if you change the numbers in the blue cells, it's just going to work all the way through here. If you change your percentage, you want to use 20% profit or whatever it is that you're choosing to use, you can do that. We have the payback point. Payback point is when did the amount of money that we made in revenue balance out the amount of money spent to produce this campaign. So once we hit 14 pieces sold, we're in the plus margin. Once we've done 15 on the variable text, the static graphics, then we're in the plus margin. It's 20. This might be the way somebody wants to hear it. The next one is just the ROI percentage. So you take a look at these, and you can see the ROI percentage. What percentage of ROI are we making? 43.73%. That's not bad. Okay, but if you look at it, we've got 196.37 on the total variable. So some of these lines make much more sense than others depending upon what the customer wants to know. The improved profit on the customer's investment, so it was 0 in the first column because that was our control group. So we made more money on the variable text, and we made even more money on the variable text variable graphics. Now this is for every additional dollar invested in the print. How much increased response rate? So for every dollar we add, we get a tiny. The neat thing about this particular line is these are common denominators. So you really can compare these. Even though they're multiple decimal places out, you can make equal comparisons on here because it's taken out all of those variables. And then the dollar cost to make a 1% change. So to make a 1% change in our response rate, we would have to spend $2,423 to make a 1% change in our response rate. So if we wanted our response rate to go up, we'd have to spend a lot more money. If we do it with a variable text, it doesn't cost as much. If we want to do it with variable text and full variable graphics, it works even better. And then when you're looking at the lifetime value of the customer, this is taking into account how much money are we going to make over a period of time. If you take a look at this, what I did was I was projecting it over a certain number of years. You get to pick however many years you want to project it over. So that's what I did up here was I took an earlier number when I was figuring out 5 years. So this was how many years did I see it was going to be based on. So you have to decide that up there, and then it just plugs in the number down below. And I just need to do that. So that's basically how the chart works, and you can see what's going on. What I'd like to do is show you one really significant thing in the teaching reference file. So here's a job. Let me blow this up just a little bit so we can see it a little bit better. This is a job that, now this one is based on a real job, but at the same time it's trying to show you that the quantity makes a difference. So this was one run at 4,000 pieces, and we took 5% of the 4,000 pieces, and we ran 5% of it as a static, 5% as variable text, 5% as full variable. And if you look at it, we got 4 responses, and so this was again based on a real thing. We got 4 responses, and this is all randomly picked, so it's, should statistically work out. We got 6 responses when we did the variable text. This is based on that 5% of 4,000. We got 6% response. And then we got 10% response when we took the 5% of the 4,000 for the full variable. And if you take a look at this, what we're looking at is, again, just of that 5%. So if I multiply it by 20, that's going to give me what it is out of 100. So I get 80 responses out of my 4,000 people. 4,000 pieces that I've distributed. I get 120 when I'm doing it with variable text, and I get 200 when I do it full variable. Now, what I want to do is go down here and just look at this. So here's the profit return on the customer's total production investment. And you see a minus number on this. So if this is the way you're reporting, this doesn't look really good, and people might not accept it. If you look at the ROI percentage, they're all minus numbers. But here's what I want you to see. If I increase the mailing cost, if I increase the count, my cost of producing it doesn't go up proportionally because all the design work is already done. All the database work is already done. So all I did was raise this to 40,000. And if you take a look at it, I need to get this size so you can see both columns together. And if you take a look at it, you can see, okay, we're looking at, again, where we had the negative numbers here. This was in value of worth, okay, the profit return on the customer's total production. It was a minus 990. But over here, when we went to 40,000, it was a plus number. And so when you're sampling, you have to be careful that you're going to do a bigger mailing eventually. You have to be careful that your sample size, you got to look at the facts and understand, is it making a difference, and then project when you make the mailing longer, because the cost isn't going to change significantly as far as the design part goes. Now it will as far as the production cost goes, but it's not going to change that much when you go from 4,000 to 40,000 and all the pre-press and the design that goes into it. And also, if you take a look at this column, when we did this column, this was the return ROI percentage, and we were negative when we did 4,000. When we did 40,000, we were in the positive side, and it's very, very significant. So you need to recognize that we have tremendous potential to make this work, and this is just a table and a chart to help you understand it. So I hope that gives you a big overview. Again, whatever's in blue you have to type in, whatever's in yellow is automatically calculated, but you can go in and you can change the formulas on any one of these, and they're all posted so that you can take a look at it and you can play with it. If you ever do use it, I just appreciate it if you give credit to the Clemson students for developing this. Thank you, and I hope this helps, and if you need to, you can always contact me if you've got some questions. Thanks.